Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Weekend Sports Wrap right here on Danny Clinkscale's Reasonably Irreverent podcast for this particular week. Happy Father's Day to you and the days to follow, where you bask in the glow of everybody reminding you what a great dad you were, maybe reinforcing some ideas, maybe saving you from thinking about the fact that maybe you weren't the best dad that you ought to be over the last calendar year. You probably were, but maybe you needed somebody to say that, somebody who loves you, many people who love you, and in fact it's gotten to the point where just hundreds of people will wish you happy Father's Day. And of course on Father's Day, for the golf-minded, even reasonably golf-minded, Father's Day always coincides with the final round of the U.S. Open. And in this particular case, playing out on the West Coast, it meant you could have a day full of activities, maybe, in fact, perhaps play some golf and not worry about missing the golf, which is going to play out in prime time. Often it takes much of an excuse to lead off a weekend sports wrap with golf, but it certainly doesn't for me ever. But no Tiger Woods, no Brooks Koepka three-peat, although it came pretty darn close. But a magnificent local tie as Topeka native and University of Kansas golfer, one-time Washburn basketball player Gary Woodland breaks through, and he does it in tremendous style, having to fend off the two-time major champion, U.S. Open champion, defending champion, the one player in Koepka who had won 4 of his last 8 majors. Well, all that went on this weekend. Under the radar, certainly, were the Kansas City Royals, who were just doing their occasional thing of winning a game every now and then. And, of course, the U.S. Women's World Cup team played yesterday at a time where people can gather at the P&L and wave the red, white, and blue at this point in time. Gary Woodland, for instance, wearing America-themed golf shoes yesterday. And much of the conversation going into the women's game had been about their previous game when they put 13 goals on the board and perhaps in many people's minds celebrated a little bit too much. They didn't have 13, but they had another easy win, and on to the knockout round they will go. And a game against a more formidable Sweden team on Tuesday will not be particularly significant. All of those things are in the mix on this weekend sports wrap, which starts up right after this.
Before you spend your time and money going after an MBA, ask yourself why. Is it so you can tell people you got your MBA? So you can add a line to your CV? So you can call it a CV instead of a resume? Truth is, any MBA will do that. On the other hand, if your goal is to learn how to successfully manage and grow a business with real-world insights from experienced professionals, well, consider getting your MBA from Park University. Our low student-to-teacher ratio gives you personalized attention, and our face-to-face and online classes offered in 8-week terms are designed with working professionals like you in mind. No wonder the Kansas City Business Journal ranks Park University as the top MBA program in the area. Classes begin June 10th at all 4 KC area locations: Parkville, Downtown, Independence, and Lenexa. Visit park.edu to get started.
For many people, a family law case will be one of the most difficult experiences in their life. The law firm of Kenneth McRae will help you through it. Personal and effective help from Ken in concert with you will develop a unique strategy for your unique case. As Ken always says, divorce can be civil law, not civil war. Licensed in Kansas? Visit McRaeLawOffice.com or call 913-972-4765.
I was duped, and I recommend you be next. For better or worse, the ultra-realistic impression of me sits now in my wife's office to spook her on a daily basis. So what is Doob? D-O-O-B. It's the keepsake of a lifetime, a 3D-generated, incredibly lifelike figurine. 66 cameras take an image at exactly the same moment in any pose, and state-of-the-art 3D technology transforms that into exact replicas of you, anyone you know or love, a pet, whomever is close to your heart. Create lifetime memories with a Doob. Visit their Facebook page at Doob 3D Kansas City, or better yet, see their incredible creations. Visit their location down on the plaza in the heart of it at 231 West 47th Street in KC Mo. Doob, be next. Golf, even in the Tiger Woods era, is a niche sport, to say the least, and it only embraces the world slightly outside of that when you have a worldly figure like Tiger Woods, and of course he reinserted himself in the golf conversation by winning the Masters in the spring, and in many people's mind because he had done such a great job in that particular tournament while others fell down around him, as so happened back in the day. People kind of got the idea that it was back in the day. I said after that tournament that I thought it was a moment in time, and while I may not end up being right, at the moment I am, as is subsequently there has been no Tiger drama in the next two majors. He missed the cut at the PGA and was never really a factor in this particular U.S. Open, although he gave the crowd some real entertainment and histrionics in the final nine by actually making 6 birdies after he made 4 early bogeys to completely put himself out of contention, which he was anyway, but he looked like he was headed for maybe a last-place finish or something like that. He did not do that, playing seemingly under physical duress, which is going to happen time after time, and is another reason why I think that it's going to be very difficult for Tiger to restore the roar, as it were, and make that Masters not a crowning achievement to his career, but something else and a step toward 18. I thought that was way overblown. As I said, maybe I will continue to be wrong. But the thing that makes it extra difficult as well is there's so many good players. There's so many good young players. And, of course, there's so many players who may pop up and find a real key that turns them from being a good PGA Tour player to perhaps, at least for 1 week, and maybe further on, a great one. And that certainly fits the model of Gary Woodland. Gary Woodland was a top 25 player in the world, 25 exactly, in fact, coming into this week. But he had to overcome these things. It's difficult to win a U.S. Open. It's difficult to win a U.S. Open when you spent your first 27 major championships not finishing in the top 10. Recently, that had started to turn. Gary Woodland had started to get himself into contention, but he certainly hadn't finished it off. And in his career, in regular events on the PGA Tour, major tournaments, he was 0 for 7, holding the 54-hole lead, which he did. And in many respects, that third round may be what he looks back on. Of course, he had to do many remarkable things on Sunday as well, as the one that really put him in position. It was an unlikely round that featured 2 par putts over 40 feet and a chip-in for a birdie. So those 3 things aren't necessarily supposed to happen. They don't happen. Justin Rose has the lead by a couple heading into the final round. Probably a completely different script. But great players make great shots, and also every player, no matter who it is, needs a little bit of good fortune. They need that 40-footer not to stop an inch from the hole or lip out. They need it to go down for par, to keep the momentum going. And Gary Woodland did have the lead going into the final round, although he had to overcome the adversity, first of all, of Justin Rose making birdie immediately, and then the lead is gone. He's tied for the lead then. And then Brooks Koepka birdieing 4 of the first 5 holes, at which point my wife turned to me as we watched it and said, I might as well go to bed now. Koepka's going to win. There was a certain sense of that, but Koepka was not the robotic figure from that point forward that he has been so many times. The course is divided into 2 sections, basically, 1 through 7, where you try to make your birdies, and the rest of the way where you try to hang on for dear life. And in the end, what did we see? That script played out exactly for Brooks Koepka. He could not turn that on its head. Koepka played the first 5 holes in 4 under par. He didn't birdie the par 5 6th hole, which is an easy hole. And from that point forward, after the 4 birdies, he would end up playing 1 over par golf. It still was a 3 under par round. It still was one of the best rounds of the day. But it turns out, with the deficit that he had going into that final round of 4 shots, it was not going to be enough. And Woodland did one after another things that really are the mark of a champion. And in this particular round, there wasn't much good fortune. There wasn't a fluky thing. There wasn't a chip in, per se. He hit 15 out of 18 greens. He hit great shots. If you wanted to look to one bit of good fortune in the final round, his most heroic shot came at the 14th as he went to the tiny par 5 green, went for it in 2, hit a 3-wood up the hill, 263 yards. The break that he got was that it was a fantastic shot. It was going to be a great shot anyway, but it probably was going to go quite a bit over the green, but it hit right into the rough in the face of the green. That slowed it down and turned it from what would been a fairly difficult pitch shot into a very simple up and down for a birdie, which really kind of restored order for him, made it a little bit easier task for the last few holes, but he was up to that task time after time after time, to the point where he could play 3 irons down the last hole and win the championship and then cap it off in Hollywood style by rolling in a long putt to win it and create a signature moment for him, the big fist pump after raising his hands in the air and waiting a beat or two or three before he slammed the fist down. And I'm sure there'll be many, many photos. You'll be at many, many golf tournaments around Kansas City over the next few years where there will be a picture of that moment for Gary Woodland, and deservedly so, a major champion at the age of 35. As I mentioned, a fine player, player who'd won 3 tournaments, but a player also who undoubtedly was seen as an underachiever. He could hit the ball so great. He has never been even just an indifferent putter. He was really pretty much a poor putter. But people saw something in him, and some of the best minds in the game knew that there was that talent there. You don't get Butch Harmon and Cowan in the short game, Pete Cowan in the short game, on your team if people don't see something. These are the highest level of the highest level instructors, and they have been with Tiger Woods and Dustin Johnson and on and on and on. And for Gary Woodland to get their ear is because they see the talent there. They see the ability, and certainly he has really, really changed his ability around the greens in addition to the great power. He hit all the shots yesterday, low cuts, high draws, everything in a golf manner that you could absolutely want, and also from a mental standpoint. But impossible for somebody to not think about the fact that they had never closed a deal after holding a 54-hole lead. But as Gary Woodland said, hey, records are made to be broken, and in this case, he did break it. It's a great story. It's a great story in so many levels. It's a great local story because of the Topeka connection and Washburn and KU, and he's probably best known, and his note that was always used on television broadcasts, of course, that we knew so well, is that he actually played a game at Allen Fieldhouse, an exhibition game for Washburn. I think he scored 10 or 11 points in that game before switching to golf and becoming a scholarship player at the University of Kansas. Not a grinder, a much better player than that, but certainly seen perhaps as an underachiever. But the personal side of it as well, the unbelievable thing he went through, he and his wife with their first child. It was supposed to be children, supposed to be twins. They lost the girl before birth, and then, of course, the boy had to go through extensive medical treatment to survive, Jackson, and now they're expecting twin girls, twins again, this time 2 girls, and his wife couldn't be there for the golf tournament because those babies are set to come along in August, but his parents were there, and they got to share in the moment on an unbelievable Father's Day. That's always a great moment. You always see the fathers there. You can always remember Graham McDowell's and Rory McIlroy's and on and on and on, and some people have just the memory of their father there because he has passed on. But in this case, the parents were there, got to see it. So just really a wonderful experience. And Gary Woodland said afterwards he was more nervous in the post-ceremonies and doing the emotional interviews and things like that than he was during play. I would probably beg to differ. Woodland's persona on the golf course really is that of athletic swagger. His on-course demeanor is somewhat of a cross between Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson. And he looks like a cocky athlete on the course, but he couldn't be anything more different when you're with him. I've been around him, had the pleasure to being around him a few times, not a lot. I'm not saying I can call him a friend or even a reasonably close acquaintance, but I've interviewed him at least a couple of times, and he's absolutely completely different than that persona he seems to exude on the golf course, and I think so many people can see that now, and it takes a win. It takes that kind of publicity that you get. It takes 17 interviews after a major championship win for people to see that side of you, and now all the features and everything else will be dialed up. The story of his son was a great story and an emotional story, but it wasn't an oft-told story in anywhere but where we are generally. But when you win a major championship and on to the next major championship, he will be a focused-on figure as they head to Royal Portrush and the Open Championship. And for Brooks Koepka, you just can't say enough about what the guy has done. He finished tied for second at the Masters, then he won the PGA for his fourth a major win in the last 8, and then he finished second in this tournament. Remarkable play. He's an unbelievably strong and stoic figure, and he clearly has a Tigerish effect. And for Gary Woodland to shrug that off and win makes that occasion even more sweet for him. So golf gets to insert itself into our sports consciousness, which it always is for me.